Not long ago, trade fights between Canada and the U.S. were about things like lumber, dairy, and steel. These were important industries, but nothing that could shake the foundation of an entire economy. But now there's something much bigger at stake. Something that the U.S. needs, Canada has, and China controls. It's not oil, it's not gas. It's critical minerals, something far more valuable in today's world. For years, these minerals were just another part of the supply chain, quietly mined, processed, and shipped around the world. But today, they've become a bargaining chip, a weapon, and a point of tension in global trade wars. Canada is one of the few countries that can give the U.S. what it needs. But the problem is, the U.S. hasn't exactly made trade easy for Canada. This raises a big question: can Canada use its mineral wealth to push back in this trade fight? And if it does, how will the U.S. respond? To understand this battle, we first need to look at why critical minerals have suddenly become the most fought-over resource in the world. For most of history, wars were fought over land, oil, and gold. But today, the real power struggle is over minerals that most people don't even think about. Critical minerals are the backbone of modern life. They're inside everything: your phone, your laptop, your car. They power the batteries that run electric vehicles, the magnets inside wind turbines, and even the guidance systems in fighter jets. Without them, entire industries would collapse. In 2023, the global trade in critical minerals was valued at over $378 billion, with demand expected to soar as countries accelerate their transition to clean energy and advanced technologies. The International Energy Agency estimates that by 2040, demand for lithium alone could increase more than 40 times, while the market for rare earth elements and other key minerals could double or triple in size. But these minerals aren't just rare, they're hard to get and even harder to refine. Having them in the ground isn't enough. You need the technology and infrastructure to extract, process, and turn them into usable materials. And this is where the real fight begins. Right now, China dominates the game. It processes over 60% of the world's rare earth elements and controls a massive share of lithium, cobalt, and nickel refining. Even when other countries mine these minerals, they often have to send them to China just to be processed. That means China holds the power to choke the supply chain anytime it wants, something it has already done before. In 2010, after a dispute with Japan, China cut off rare earth exports, sending prices through the roof and causing panic in global markets. And just recently, in 2023, it restricted exports of gallium and germanium, two lesser-known but critical materials used in semiconductors. Governments around the world saw this as a warning. Whoever controls the minerals controls the future. The United States and Europe have been scrambling to reduce their dependence on China. They've been investing billions into new mining projects and refining facilities. Countries like Indonesia and Chile have started restricting their own mineral exports to get better deals. Australia is rapidly expanding its production to compete. And then there's Canada. For years, Canada's economy has been known for things like oil, natural gas, and timber. But buried beneath its surface is a massive supply of critical minerals that the world is now desperate for. Canada is home to over 200 known deposits of lithium, nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements. In fact, it has some of the largest untapped lithium reserves in the world. And when it comes to nickel, Canada is already a top producer, with high-quality deposits that are essential for electric vehicle batteries. But having minerals isn't enough. What makes Canada truly powerful is that it's a trusted supplier. Unlike countries with unstable governments or weak environmental protections, Canada has a reputation for responsible mining, strong regulations, and fair business practices. That's exactly what the U.S. and its allies are looking for: a secure, reliable source of minerals outside of China's control. The Canadian government knows this and is making big moves to capitalize on the opportunity. In 2022, it launched a $3.8 billion critical minerals strategy to expand mining, build refining facilities, and reduce dependence on foreign processing. The goal is to make Canada a key player in the global supply chain, not just for raw materials, but for high-value mineral processing and battery production as well. And companies are paying attention. Major automakers like Volkswagen and Stellantis have already announced plans to build battery plants in Canada. Even Tesla has been eyeing Canadian nickel and lithium sources to power its next generation of electric vehicles. On paper, this seems like the perfect setup. Canada has the minerals, the credibility, and a growing investment in processing. On the other hand, if there's one thing the U.S. has learned in recent years, it's relying on other countries for critical resources is a dangerous game. For decades, the U.S. barely thought about where its minerals came from. It was cheaper to outsource mining and refining to other countries, so that's exactly what happened. But now, that decision has come back to haunt them. Today, the U.S. imports more than 80% of its critical minerals, and for some, like rare earth elements, that number is close to 100%. Even though the country has its own reserves, mining projects are tied up in environmental regulations, local opposition, and years of red tape. This wasn't a big problem until now. A wake-up call came in 2019 during the U.S.-China trade war. As tensions escalated, China's state media openly suggested cutting off rare earth exports to cripple American industries. The message was clear. If trade negotiations went badly, the U.S. could be left without the materials needed for everything from electric vehicles to missile systems. Markets panicked, and Washington rushed to find alternative suppliers. The crisis was avoided, but the fear remained. What if China actually followed through next time? That sent a clear message. If the U.S. doesn't secure its own supply, it's vulnerable. That's why Washington is so eager to build a North American supply chain, one that excludes China. The Inflation Reduction Act was designed to boost domestic production of critical minerals and batteries. But there's a catch. It heavily favors U.S.-based mining and manufacturing. That's where things get tricky for Canada. On one hand, Canada is supposed to be the U.S.'s closest trade partner. But on the other, American policies are making it harder for Canadian companies to compete. The IRA gives huge tax credits to American-made products, putting Canadian businesses at a disadvantage. Even though Canada has the minerals the U.S. desperately needs, it's still caught in the crossfire of America's Made in USA push. But here's where things get complicated for Canada. The U.S. wants Canada to take a hard stance against China, blocking Chinese companies from investing in its mining sector and cutting off any mineral trade with Beijing. Canada has already followed some of these demands, restricting Chinese investment in key mining projects. But at the same time, China remains a major buyer of Canadian raw materials. Completely shutting off trade with China could mean losing a valuable market, something Canada's mining industry isn't thrilled about. So now Canada is stuck in the middle. Does it fully align with the U.S. and risk losing economic opportunities? Or does it keep some ties with China and face potential backlash from its closest ally? This delicate balancing act will shape the future of Canada's role in the global mineral supply chain. So where does Canada go from here? One option is to push back against U.S. trade restrictions and demand fairer treatment. Canada is the top supplier of metals and minerals to the U.S. According to U.S. Trade Commission data, the country provided 18.6% of America's imports in 2023, followed by China and Mexico, both at 11.2%. If the U.S. wants a reliable supply of critical minerals, Canada could insist on better trade terms, more access to American subsidies, or guarantees that Canadian businesses won't be sidelined. Some policymakers believe it's time for Canada to stop playing the junior partner and start negotiating from a position of strength. Another option is diversification. Instead of relying too much on the U.S., Canada could expand its trade with other allies. The European Union, Japan, and South Korea are all eager to secure mineral supplies outside of China. By strengthening partnerships with these countries, Canada could reduce its dependence on the U.S. and gain more bargaining power. Then there's the question of domestic strategy. If Canada wants to be a real player in the critical minerals industry, it can't just be a raw material exporter. It needs to invest in refining and manufacturing. Right now, too much of Canada's mineral wealth is sent abroad for processing. By building up its own refining and battery production industries, Canada could capture more economic value and reduce its reliance on foreign supply chains altogether. But there's also a risk. If Canada plays too aggressively, it could backfire. If Canada limits mineral exports or pushes too hard in trade talks, the U.S. might look for other options. While Canada is the most convenient supplier, it's not the only one. Countries like Australia and Brazil are also expanding their mineral industries, and the U.S. could shift its focus there instead. So the next few years will be critical. Will Canada and the U.S. find a way to work together? Or will minerals become another point of conflict in their trade relationship? One thing is certain. Critical minerals are no longer just another resource. They are the new oil of the 21st century, and whoever controls them will shape the future of energy, technology, and global power. And Canada has a rare opportunity to turn its mineral wealth into real economic and political leverage. The only question is, how will it use it?